state famous for coal mines, country roads, and, well, not exactly rolling out the welcome mat for black folks. If you're considering moving here, let's just say you might want to reconsider. Unless your idea of diversity is choosing between regular and extra crispy fried chicken at the one gas station that doubles as a restaurant. First things first, West Virginia is overwhelmingly white. I'm talking about over 90% white. If you're looking for cultural diversity, good luck. You'll have a better chance of spotting Bigfoot than finding a black community that feels like home. It's the kind of place where being black automatically makes you a local celebrity, but not the good kind. More like, what's a black person doing here? And let's talk economic opportunities, or rather, the lack thereof. West Virginia ranks among the worst states for jobs, especially for black professionals. If you're looking to climb the corporate ladder, you might find yourself stuck on the first rung, wondering why no one handed you the rest of the steps. The job market here is heavily reliant on coal mining and manual labor, and unless you're bringing a pickaxe and a strong back, you might find yourself struggling to find meaningful employment. But the biggest issue? The unwelcoming vibe. There's a deep-rooted history of racism in this state, and while every place has its issues, West Virginia seems stuck in a time warp. Reports of racial hostility, discrimination, and general lack of make it one of those states where you just know you're not exactly being embraced with open arms. And let's be real, if you can't find a black barbershop, soul food spot, or even a church where folks don't look at you sideways, is it really home? So unless you love mountains, coal dust, and being the only black person for miles, West Virginia might not be the move. But hey, if you do end up here, at least you'll always have a great view and plenty of good music. Number 7, Missouri. Missouri, a state that just can't seem to shake its history of racial tension, no matter how many times it tries to rebrand itself. If you're thinking about moving here, let me ask you this. Do you enjoy high crime rates, questionable policing, and feeling like you stepped into a never-ending episode of America's Racial Injustice Special? If not, Missouri might not be for you. Let's be honest. Ferguson. If you don't know about the protests that erupted after the police killing of Michael Brown in 2014, you might want to do a quick Google search. That tragic event didn't just expose Missouri's deep racial inequalities, it shouted them from the rooftops. The state's justice system has a well-documented history of over-policing black communities while somehow ignoring crime in areas that should be getting more attention. And speaking of crime, St. Louis has one of the highest crime rates in the entire country. It's consistently ranked among the most dangerous cities in America. And let's just say, if you value your safety, you might want to think twice before settling down here. But wait, before you say, well, maybe I'll just move somewhere else in Missouri, let's talk about the rest of the state. Outside of St. Louis and Kansas City, Missouri is basically a giant rural landscape where diversity is about as common as a black-owned farm in a cornfield. In other words, it's not exactly the most inviting place for black folks. And if you think racial profiling is just a big city issue, think again. Missouri law enforcement has been called out repeatedly for disproportionately stopping and arresting black drivers. Let's not forget the politics. Missouri leans heavily conservative, and while that's not automatically a red flag, it does mean policies that impact black communities often get ignored, dismissed, or outright denied. Public schools, underfunded. Affordable housing, good luck. Community resources, hope you like driving across state lines to find them. So unless you have attention, overzealous policing, and a state that feels like it's stuck in the 1950s, Missouri might not be your best bet. But hey, at least the Buck Q is good, right? Number 6, Kentucky. Alright, let's talk about Kentucky. You might know it for bourbon, bluegrass, and basketball, but if you're black and thinking about moving here, you probably know it for something else. Racial profiling, police brutality, and systemic discrimination. Yeah, Kentucky is the kind of place where you can get a world-class plate of fried chicken, but still get side-eyed just for existing. First, let's start with the elephant in the room. The 2020 her tragic death at the hands of Louisville police put a national spotlight on Kentucky's deep-rooted issues with law enforcement and racial injustice. And while the protests that followed forced some tough political change is moving at the speed of molasses in January. But it's not just Louisville. Racial profiling is a statewide sport here, with black drivers being disproportionately stopped and searched. Don't even think about standing around minding your own business in certain areas. You might as well wear a sign that says, "Suspicious activity," because the cops might treat you like a walking crime scene. Then there's the political landscape. It means hard conservative, which means policies that actually help black communities tend to get buried under the weight of small government rhetoric. Public schools? Severely underfunded. Affordable housing? Limited. Job opportunities for black professionals? Slim pickings. Basically, if you're looking for a place that supports racial progress, Kentucky is still trying to find the map. And let's not forget the racial demographics. Kentucky is about 25% white, and in some parts, seeing another black person might feel like spotting a rare bird in the wild. There aren't black communities here. There definitely are. Depending on where you live, you might feel like the only drop of melanin in a sea of mayonnaise. So, unless you really love horse racing, bourbon, and being uncomfortably aware of how different you are in certain spaces, Kentucky might not be the move. But hey, at least you'll never have to wait in line at the black barbershop, because there probably isn't one nearby. Alright, you're still with me. That means you're finding this eye-opening, or at least entertaining. But let me ask you, have you ever lived in a place where you felt completely out of place? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And hey, if you're enjoying this breakdown, go ahead and hit that like button so more people can see this. And don't forget to subscribe, because, trust me, we've got a lot more to uncover. Number 5. South Carolina. South Carolina, a state that's on the surface. Scratch just a little bit, you'll find a whole lot of racial baggage. If you're black and thinking about moving here, just know that while the beaches might be nice, the vibes might not be. First off, history is everywhere here. And not in a wow, this is fascinating kind of way, but more like a wow, they still fly Confederate flags kind of way. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union. And let's just say some folks here still haven't fully gotten over the outcome of the Civil War. Drive through certain parts of the state, and you might think you've traveled back in time. Except instead of Downton Abbey, it's more like unfinished reconstruction. Now let's talk about housing, education, and jobs. Or rather, how black folks stick in all three.
Come on, bro.
South Carolina has some of the worst racial disparities in homeownership, with black families facing higher loan denials and lower property values. Schools are underfunded, especially in predominantly black areas. Job opportunities? Let's just say if you're black, your career options might feel like an old blockbuster. Limited and outdated. And let's not ignore the racial rhetoric that still lingers here. Confederate monuments? Plenty. Thinly veiled racism in politics? Oh, absolutely. Some parts of South Carolina have very energy, like when you walk into a room and suddenly feel like you shouldn't be there. The whole state isn't bad, of course. Charleston has some solid black history and culture. But step outside the city, and you might start hearing the phrase, heritage, not hate, a little too often for comfort. So unless you enjoy navigating racial inequality, dodging Confederate bumper stickers, and wondering why your neighborhood school hasn't been updated since The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was on TV, South Carolina might not be the move. But hey, at least the food is good. Just don't be surprised if the welcome isn't as warm as the crowd. Arkansas. Arkansas is beautiful, but the racial history, not so much. If you're black and considering a move here, you might want to think twice. Unless, of course, you enjoy feeling like an uninvited guest at a very uncomfortable family reunion. First off, Arkansas has a long, ugly history of racial violence. Remember the Little Rock Nine? Yeah, that wasn't some distant past situation. It was 1967. While you think attitudes would have evolved a bit since then, let's just say some parts of Arkansas still hold on to good old days a little too tightly. And if you're thinking, well, maybe things have changed, let's talk about economic mobility, or in Arkansas's case, the lack of it. This state ranks among the first for black people trying to climb the economic ladder. The job market is about as promising as a blockbuster comeback. And if you're looking for a thriving black business scene, let's just say, if we were a bus, Arkansas would be running about 3 hours late. If it shows up at all.
Great.
Now let's address the unwelcoming vibe. Some areas in Arkansas still feel stuck in time, where seeing a black person moving into the neighborhood gets the same reaction as a UFO sighting. The kind of place where stares linger too long, small talk feels forced, and "you're not from around here, are you?" is less of a question and more of a warning. And before you say, "Well, maybe I'll stick to the cities," sure, Little Rock and a few other spots have a bit more diversity, but outside of those, good luck finding community spaces, black-owned businesses, or even a decent barber. You might have to road trip to another state just to get a proper fade. So unless you love outdated racial attitudes, limited job opportunities, and feeling like an accidental time traveler, Arkansas might not be the move.